Commander Tokishi Yamamoto carefully adjusted his flight goggles while sitting in the cockpit of his Nakajima B-5N torpedo bomber, his hand steady despite the enormity of what lay ahead. In his breast pocket, he carried a letter from his wife Michiko in Hiroshima, promising to tend their small garden until his victorious return from what Admiral Nagumo had assured them would be a swift campaign that would force America to seek peace within 6 months. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. In 90 minutes, this same pilot would witness something that would shatter every assumption the Imperial Japanese Navy had made about American resolve and industrial capacity. He would watch in stunned disbelief as American battleships that should have remained crippled for months began responding with coordinated defensive fire that demonstrated preparation and training far beyond Japanese intelligence estimates. Within hours, Commander Yamamoto would realize that instead of delivering a knockout blow to a complacent enemy, they had awakened a sleeping industrial giant whose true capabilities no one in the Japanese High Command had accurately assessed. Though Japanese forces would achieve devastating tactical success at Pearl Harbor, sinking or damaging 18 American warships and destroying over 300 aircraft, the strategic miscalculation would prove catastrophic beyond imagination. The attack that was designed to cripple American naval power for 18 months would instead trigger the largest industrial mobilization in human history, transforming America from a peacetime economy producing 3,000 aircraft annually to a war machine that would manufacture 96,000 aircraft in 1944 alone. The mathematics of industrial warfare were about to be written not in the tactical victories claimed by Japanese pilots, but in the production statistics that would emerge from American factories over the following 4 years. Commander Yamamoto began December 7th believing that Japan's superior training, equipment, and fighting spirit would compensate for America's theoretical industrial advantages. He would end the day having witnessed offensive capabilities that suggested American military preparation was far more advanced than Japanese intelligence had indicated, and that the sleeping giant they had attacked possessed both the will and the capacity to transform the Pacific into Japan's graveyard. The pre-dawn darkness aboard the aircraft carrier Kaji thrummed with a controlled tension of 183 aircraft preparing for the most audacious naval aviation attack in history. Commander Yamamoto had trained for this moment for 18 months, practicing low-level torpedo runs against mock targets that replicated the shallow waters of Pearl Harbor. His squadron had achieved hit rates of 85% during training exercises, performance levels that convinced Admiral Nagumo's staff that American naval power could be eliminated with surgical precision. The strategic calculations that had led to this moment reflected a fundamental misunderstanding of American character and capabilities that would prove more devastating than any tactical failure. Japanese planners had studied American industrial statistics from 1940 and concluded that America lacked both the will to sustain a prolonged Pacific War and the manufacturing capacity to replace losses from a devastating surprise attack. Their analysis showed American steel production at 67 million tons annually compared to Japan's 7 million tons, but Japanese strategists dismissed these figures as peacetime production that could not be rapidly converted to military applications. Admiral Yamamoto himself had warned that Japan could run wild for 6 months to a year, but after that period, American industrial capacity would become decisive. His warning had been noted but not fully internalized by Japanese planners who believed that superior fighting spirit and tactical excellence could overcome material disadvantages. The concept of Bushido, the way of the warrior, had created a military culture that emphasized courage, discipline, and sacrifice while undervaluing industrial logistics and sustained production capabilities. Commander Yamamoto's personal journey to this moment embodied the contradictions within Japanese strategic thinking. He had graduated from the Imperial Japanese Naval Academy with highest honors, specializing in naval aviation tactics that emphasized precision, coordination, and aggressive initiative. His training had included extensive study of American naval capabilities, but that study had focused on ship designs, armament specifications, and tactical doctrines rather than industrial production capacity or national mobilization potential. The intelligence briefings that had shaped Japanese planning reflected sophisticated understanding of American military hardware combined with profound ignorance of American industrial capabilities and national psychology. Japanese naval attachés had provided detailed specifications for every American battleship, cruiser, and aircraft carrier, including armor thickness, gun calibers, and propulsion systems. They had analyzed American pilot training programs, aircraft performance characteristics, and tactical procedures with scientific precision. However, those same intelligence assessments had failed to grasp the significance of American automobile production, which had reached 4 million vehicles in 1940, representing manufacturing capabilities that could be converted to aircraft and ship production with devastating efficiency. Japanese planners had noted that American factories produce consumer goods rather than military equipment, interpreting this as evidence of national weakness rather than industrial flexibility that could be rapidly redirected toward military production. The cultural assumptions that influenced Japanese strategic planning reflected a warrior tradition that valued individual excellence over systematic organization. Japanese military doctrine emphasized the spiritual strength of the individual soldier, the tactical brilliance of field commanders, and the moral superiority of Japanese civilization over materialistic Western societies. These beliefs have proven successful in conflict against China and Russia, reinforcing confidence that fighting spirit could overcome material disadvantages. Commander Yamamoto had internalized these cultural values while developing exceptional technical competence as a naval aviator. His aircraft maintenance record showed mechanical reliability rates above 95%, achieved through personal attention to engine performance, control system calibration, and armament functionality. His navigation skills enabled precise positioning under challenging weather conditions. His gunnery scores ranked among the top 5% of Imperial Navy pilots. This combination of cultural confidence and technical excellence had created a dangerous psychological framework that would prove catastrophic when confronted with American industrial reality. Japanese pilots like Commander Yamamoto possessed superior training, better aircraft, and more combat experience than their American counterparts in December 1941. Their tactical doctrines emphasized aggressive initiative, precise coordination, and acceptance of casualties to achieve strategic objectives. Their equipment, particularly the Mitsubishi A6M0 fighter, represented technological superiority that American aircraft could not match. The strategic context for the Pearl Harbor attack reflected Japanese recognition that their resource limitations required decisive early victories that would force American acceptance of Japanese dominance in the Pacific. Japan's oil reserves would sustain military operations for approximately 18 months without access to Dutch East Indies petroleum resources. Japanese steel production could support naval construction and replacement programs only if American industrial capacity remained focused on domestic rather than military applications. These resource constraints had led Japanese planners to develop a strategy based on achieving rapid, overwhelming victories that would demonstrate American vulnerability while establishing Japanese control over resource-rich territories that could sustain prolonged conflict. The Pearl Harbor attack represented the opening move in a campaign designed to eliminate American naval power, secure Japanese flanks during expansion into Southeast Asia, and convince American political leadership that Pacific War would be too costly to pursue. The tactical planning for Pearl Harbor reflected the highest levels of Japanese military competence and attention to detail. Admiral Nagumo's strike force had approached Hawaiian waters along a northern route that avoided commercial shipping lanes and minimized detection risks. Weather reconnaissance had identified optimal conditions for carrier operations and aircraft recovery. Intelligence assessments had provided detailed information about American ship dispositions, defensive arrangements, and likely response patterns. Commander Yamamoto's torpedo bomber squadron had been assigned primary responsibility for attacking American battleships moored along Battleship Row. Their training had emphasized low-level approaches that would minimize exposure to anti-aircraft fire while ensuring torpedo accuracy in the shallow waters of Pearl Harbor. Modified torpedoes with special fins had been developed specifically for shallow water operations, allowing successful attacks in depths where conventional torpedoes would have struck the harbor bottom. The coordination between different aircraft types demonstrated Japanese tactical sophistication that would achieve devastating short-term success. High-level bombers would attack ship superstructures and pierce armor decks with armor-piercing bombs converted from naval artillery shells. Dive bombers would target aircraft installations and smaller vessels with precision attacks. Fighter aircraft would establish air superiority while providing cover for attacking bombers. However, the tactical excellence that enabled Pearl Harbor's success would also reveal strategic assumptions that were fundamentally flawed. Japanese planners had calculated that destroying 8 American battleships would eliminate American naval power for 12 to 18 months, providing time for Japan to establish defensive positions throughout the Pacific that would make American counter-defense prohibitively expensive. These calculations assumed that American shipbuilding capacity could not rapidly replace battle losses, and that American national psychology would favor negotiated settlement over prolonged conflict. Both assumptions would prove catastrophically incorrect within months of the Pearl Harbor attack. American shipbuilding programs that existed only as blueprints in December 1941 would be launching fleet carriers and battleships by 1943. American national psychology, rather than favoring negotiated settlement, would demand unconditional surrender and complete destruction of Japanese military capability. The tactical success that Japanese forces achieved at Pearl Harbor would trigger American responses that exceeded Japanese strategic planning by orders of magnitude. Commander Yamamoto's personal preparation for the attack reflected the individual excellence that characterized Japanese military culture while embodying the strategic blindness that would prove fatal to Japanese war objectives. His aircraft had been maintained to perfection, with engine timing adjusted for optimal performance at the altitudes and A-speed required for torpedo attack profiles. His navigation equipment had been calibrated for precise positioning despite expected American radio jamming. His personal equipment included survival gear optimized for Pacific Ocean conditions. The letter from his wife Michiko represented both the personal motivation that drove Japanese military performance and the cultural assumptions that shaped strategic planning. She had written about tending their garden while awaiting his return from what she described as a campaign that would establish Japanese leadership in Asia and demonstrate the superiority of Japanese civilization over Western materialism. Her confidence reflected widespread Japanese belief that spiritual strength and cultural unity provided advantages that American industrial capacity could not overcome. These cultural beliefs had created psychological frameworks that prevented accurate assessment of American capabilities and intentions. Japanese society had been told that Americans were soft, individualistic, and incapable of sustained sacrifice for national objectives. American involvement in European conflicts was interpreted as evidence of divided loyalties and strategic confusion, rather than global engagement that demonstrated industrial capacity and organizational capability. The pre-attack briefings that Commander Yamamoto had received embodied this combination of tactical sophistication and strategic misunderstanding. Intelligence officers had provided precise timing for the attack, coordinated with similar operations throughout the Pacific that would eliminate American and British naval forces from the Philippines to Singapore. Weather forecasts indicated optimal conditions for carrier operations and aircraft recovery. Target assignments had been distributed with mathematical precision that allocated specific ships to specific squadrons. However, these same briefings had failed to address fundamental questions about American response capabilities and national determination. Intelligence assessments had not examined American industrial mobilization plans that had been developed during 1940 and 1941 in anticipation of possible war involvement. Strategic planning had not considered American technological development programs that were already producing radar systems, improved aircraft designs, and naval innovations that would prove decisive in Pacific combat. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The tactical preparation that enabled Pearl Harbor's success also demonstrated Japanese military capabilities that would prove insufficient for sustained industrial warfare. Japanese pilot training programs produced aviators with exceptional individual skills but limited replacement capacity. Japanese aircraft manufacturing could maintain quality while producing approximately 5,000 aircraft annually, compared to American production that would reach 96,000 aircraft in 1944. Japanese naval construction program could build sophisticated warships in limited quantities while American shipyards would launch escort carriers faster than Japanese forces could sink them. As Commander Yamamoto performed his final equipment checks before takeoff, he embodied the paradox that would define Japanese military performance throughout the Pacific War. His individual competence, technical skill, and tactical preparation were superior to those of his American counterparts in December 1941. His aircraft represented technological excellence that American forces could not match. His training had prepared him for complex operations under challenging conditions. However, the strategic framework that enabled his tactical excellence was based on fundamental misunderstandings about American character, industrial capacity, and national determination that would prove fatal to Japanese war objectives. The tactical success that he was about to achieve would trigger American responses that Japanese planners had neither anticipated nor prepared to counter. The sleeping giant they were about to awaken possessed industrial capabilities that would transform the Pacific War into a mathematical equation where Japanese courage and skill became irrelevant against overwhelming material superiority. The aircraft carrier deck beneath Commander Yamamoto's torpedo bomber vibrated with a controlled energy of 183 aircraft preparing for simultaneous launch. Engine testing had verified mechanical readiness. Navigation systems had been synchronized for coordinated approach to targets. Communication protocols had been established for coordination between attack waves. Fuel loads had been calculated for maximum range while maintaining adequate reserves for carrier recovery. The organizational capability demonstrated by this preparation would prove to be both Japan's greatest strength and most dangerous limitation. Japanese military forces could execute complex operations with precision that exceeded American capabilities in December 1941. Their planning processes considered variables that American forces often overlooked. Their equipment maintenance standards produced reliability rates that American forces would not achieve until 1943. However, this organizational excellence was based on resources and industrial capacity that could not sustain prolonged conflict against American production capability. The 183 aircraft preparing to attack Pearl Harbor represented approximately 4% of total Japanese naval aviation strength, a concentration of force that could not be repeated frequently without compromising defensive capabilities elsewhere. The pilots manning these aircraft averaged over 800 hours of flight time, training standards that Japanese programs could not maintain while expanding to meet wartime replacement requirements. Commander Yamamoto's final pre-flight thoughts reflected both the confidence and the blindness that characterized Japanese strategic thinking. He felt pride in representing Japanese military excellence during this historic operation. He felt confidence that Japanese tactical superiority would achieve devastating success against unprepared American forces. He felt certainty that demonstrating Japanese capability would convince American leadership to seek negotiated settlement rather than prolonged conflict. Within hours, these feelings would be replaced by growing unease as American defensive responses demonstrated preparation and capability that contradicted Japanese intelligence assessments. The tactical success that Japanese forces achieved would be accompanied by evidence that America possessed both the will and the capacity to transform the Pacific War into an industrial contest that Japan could not win. The sleeping giant they were about to awaken would prove to be even more dangerous than Admiral Yamamoto's most pessimistic warnings had suggested. As aircraft engines began warming for takeoff, Commander Yamamoto represented both the pinnacle of Japanese military capability and the tragedy of strategic miscalculation that would destroy the nation he served with such dedication. His tactical excellence would contribute to a victory that ensured Japan's ultimate defeat. His cultural confidence would be shattered by encountering an enemy whose true capabilities exceeded every assumption that had shaped Japanese strategic planning. The dawn of December 7, 1941, would mark not just the beginning of America's involvement in World War II, but the beginning of Japan's confrontation with industrial and organizational capabilities that would prove overwhelming despite Japanese advantages in training, equipment, and tactical doctrine. Commander Yamamoto was about to participate in the most tactically successful operation in Japanese military history and the most strategically disastrous decision in Japanese national experience. Commander Yamamoto pulled back on his control stick as his Nakajima B-5N Kate torpedo bomber descended through 500 feet above Pearl Harbor, the pristine waters below reflecting the early morning Hawaiian sun like polished steel. Through his bomb sight, the American Pacific Fleet lay spread before him in formations that seemed designed for inspection rather than defense, exactly as Japanese intelligence had predicted. 8 massive battleships lined Battleship Row in perfect alignment, their gray hulls presenting ideal targets for the modified torpedoes his squadron carried. The radio crackled with a coded message that would echo through history. Tora, Tora, Tora. Commander Mitsu Fukaida's signal confirming complete tactical surprise had been achieved. As Yamamoto aligned his aircraft for the torpedo run that would cripple the USS Nevada, he felt the surge of professional satisfaction that comes from executing complex operation with mathematical precision. Every element of the attack was proceeding according to the meticulous planning that had consumed 18 months of preparation. However, Within the next 30 minutes, Commander Yamamoto would witness American defensive responses that contradicted every assumption Japanese intelligence had made about American military preparedness and fighting capability. The ships he was attacking would demonstrate damage control procedures that exceeded Japanese expectations, while American anti-aircraft gunners would achieve accuracy rates that suggested training and preparation far beyond what Japanese planners had anticipated. The tactical victory that Japanese forces were achieving would reveal strategic miscalculations that would prove catastrophic to Japanese war objectives. The mathematics of surprise attack were unfolding exactly as Japanese strategists had calculated, but the mathematics of American response would prove to exceed every parameter that had shaped Japanese planning. Commander Yamamoto's torpedo run against the Nevada would achieve perfect technical execution, while simultaneously revealing American capabilities that would transform his tactical success into Japan's strategic nightmare. The sleeping giant they had awakened was already demonstrating alertness and resilience that Japanese war plans had failed to anticipate. The approach to Pearl Harbor had proceeded with a precision that characterized Japanese military operations at their peak effectiveness. Yamamoto's torpedo bomber squadron had maintained perfect formation discipline during the 230-mile flight from the carrier task force, navigating by dead reckoning through cloud formations that provided concealment from potential American patrol aircraft. Radio silence had been maintained throughout the approach, with flight leaders using hand signals and formation adjustments to communicate course corrections and target assignments. The sight of Pearl Harbor spread below them validated months of intelligence preparation, while simultaneously revealing the magnitude of American naval power that Japanese forces were challenging. The harbor contained not just the 8 battleships that represented primary targets, but dozens of cruisers, destroyers, submarines, and auxiliary vessels that demonstrated the depth of American naval resources. Shore installations visible from the air showed maintenance facilities, fuel storage systems, and administrative complexes that indicated organizational capabilities extending far beyond the ships themselves. Yamamoto's tactical training had prepared him to focus on immediate target assignment rather than broader strategic implications, but the scale of American naval infrastructure was impossible to ignore. The dry docks contained battleships under repair and modernization, suggesting American shipbuilding and maintenance capabilities that exceeded Japanese intelligence estimates. Aircraft installations showed hundreds of planes arranged in formations that indicated peacetime security procedures rather than wartime dispersal, confirming that tactical surprise had been achieved completely. The modified torpedo his aircraft carried represented 18 months of engineering development specifically designed for Pearl Harbor's shallow water conditions. Standard Japanese aerial torpedoes required water depths exceeding 100 feet to avoid striking bottom after release, but Pearl Harbor's average depth of 45 feet had necessitated comprehensive redesign of torpedo guidance systems, warhead configurations, and stabilization mechanisms. The resulting weapon could operate effectively in depths as shallow as 35 feet while maintaining accuracy sufficient for battleship-sized targets. This technical achievement demonstrated Japanese engineering excellence while embodying the strategic tunnel vision that characterized the entire war planning process. Japanese engineers had solved complex technical problems to enable tactical success without considering whether tactical success would advance strategic objectives. The torpedoes that would cripple American battleships had been designed to achieve maximum immediate damage without reference to American replacement capabilities or industrial response potential. As Yamamoto's aircraft descended toward torpedo release altitude, American anti-aircraft fire began erupting around its formation with intensity that exceeded Japanese expectations. Intelligence assessments had predicted minimal initial resistance based on assumptions about American alertness and reaction time, but the defensive fire that greeted Japanese attackers demonstrated preparation and training that contradicted those assumptions. Gun crews were manning positions and achieving target acquisition faster than Japanese planning had anticipated. The accuracy of American anti-aircraft fire provided the first indication that Japanese intelligence assessments had underestimated American military capabilities. Defensive gunners were achieving near-miss distances that indicated extensive training and familiarity with their weapon systems. Fire control coordination between different gun positions suggested communication systems and tactical procedures that exceeded peacetime maintenance standards. The volume of defensive fire increased exponentially during the first 10 minutes of attack, demonstrating rapid mobilization capabilities that Japanese planners had not anticipated. Commander Yamamoto's torpedo run against the USS Nevada required maintaining precise altitude, airspeed, and approach angle while navigating through increasingly intense anti-aircraft fire. His training had emphasized the importance of steady control inputs and consistent flight parameters to ensure torpedo accuracy, but the defensive fire was creating turbulence and psychological pressure that tested every aspect of his preparation. The Nevada's anti-aircraft guns were tracking his approach with precision that forced constant course corrections while maintaining attack parameters. The technical execution of his torpedo release represented the culmination of months of specialized training and preparation. Release altitude of 60 feet above water level, airspeed of 140 knots, approach angle of 15 degrees to starboard, range to target of 800 meters. These parameters have been calculated to optimize torpedo performance while minimizing exposure to defensive fire, but executing them under combat conditions required concentration and skill that exceeded peacetime training requirements. The torpedo's trajectory after release followed a predicted path toward the Nevada's port side, but Yamamoto immediately observed that American damage control responses were beginning before the weapon struck its target. Crew members were already closing watertight doors, activating fire suppression systems, and implementing emergency procedures that suggested preparation for attack scenarios. The speed and coordination of these responses indicated training and organization that exceeded Japanese intelligence estimates of American military readiness. The explosion as his torpedo struck the Nevada's hull created the massive fireball and structural damage that Japanese planners had calculated would eliminate the battleship from combat effectiveness for 12 to 18 months. The immediate tactical success validated the technical preparations and training that had enabled the Pearl Harbor attack, but the American response to damage began immediately and demonstrated capabilities that Japanese war planning had not considered. Damage control teams were responding with efficiency that suggested extensive preparation for exactly this type of attack. Within minutes of the torpedo strike, the Nevada was demonstrating damage control capabilities that exceeded Japanese expectations for American naval training. Fire suppression systems were operating effectively to contain fuel fires. Pumping systems were controlling flooding to prevent total loss of the vessel. Communication systems remained operational to coordinate repair efforts and defensive responses. These capabilities suggested American naval preparation that extended beyond the peacetime procedures that Japanese intelligence had assumed characterized American military operations. The broader tactical success of the Pearl Harbor attack was proceeding according to Japanese calculations while simultaneously revealing American capabilities that contradicted the strategic assumptions underlying Japanese war planning. Multiple battleships were sustaining damage that would eliminate them from immediate combat effectiveness, achieving the tactical objective of neutralizing American naval power in the Pacific. However, the American response to attack was demonstrating organizational resilience and technical competence that exceeded every parameter Japanese strategists had used to calculate American war potential. Commander Yamamoto's observation position after completing his torpedo run provided perspective on the overall attack that revealed both Japanese tactical excellence and strategic miscalculation. Japanese aircraft were executing coordinated strikes with precision that demonstrated superior training and preparation. Target assignments were being completed according to predetermined schedules. Coordination between different aircraft types was achieving optimal results while minimizing interference between attacking units. However, the American defensive response was escalating in ways that Japanese intelligence had not predicted. Anti-aircraft fire was becoming increasingly accurate and coordinated. Fighter aircraft were beginning to appear despite initial surprise. Ground installations were implementing defensive procedures that suggested preparation for sustained attack rather than capitulation after initial shock. These responses indicated American military capability and determination that exceeded Japanese strategic calculations. The dive-bombing attacks against aircraft installations were achieving devastating tactical success while revealing American aircraft production capabilities that Japanese planners had underestimated. Hundreds of American aircraft were being destroyed on the ground, eliminating immediate American air power in the Pacific, but the installations themselves showed manufacturing and maintenance capabilities that suggested replacement potential exceeding Japanese estimates. Hangars contained production equipment for aircraft assembly and modification. Maintenance facilities showed capability for engine overhaul and weapons system installation. These observations suggested American aircraft production capacity that exceeded Japanese intelligence estimates by significant margins. The aircraft being destroyed represented immediate tactical losses but not necessarily strategic degradation of American air power if replacement rates exceeded destruction rates. Japanese planners had calculated that destroying 300 American aircraft would eliminate American air capability for 6 months, but the infrastructure visible at Pearl Harbor suggested replacement timelines that might be measured in weeks rather than months. The most disturbing aspect of American response was the speed with which defensive measures were being implemented across multiple installations simultaneously. Communication systems were coordinating responses between different facilities. Personnel were implementing emergency procedures that suggested extensive preparation and training. Equipment was being activated and deployed with efficiency that indicated regular practice and maintenance. These capabilities suggested American military preparation that exceeded peacetime standards and approached wartime readiness. Commander Yamamoto's professional assessment of American defensive capabilities was evolving during the attack from initial confirmation of Japanese tactical superiority to growing concern about strategic implications. American gunners were achieving accuracy improvements throughout the attack that demonstrated learning and adaptation under combat conditions. Communication systems were maintaining coordination despite damage to primary facilities. Personnel were demonstrating courage and competence that contradicted Japanese assumptions about American fighting spirit. The second wave of Japanese attacks encountered American defensive fire that was significantly more accurate and coordinated than initial resistance, providing evidence that American forces were adapting to combat conditions faster than Japanese planning had anticipated. Anti-aircraft batteries were achieving target acquisition and fire control coordination that exceeded peacetime training standards. Fighter aircraft were beginning to engage Japanese bombers with tactics that suggested combat preparation beyond routine patrol duties. These defensive improvements during the course of a single attack suggested American military capabilities that could adapt and improve under combat conditions, a factor that Japanese strategic planning had not considered. Japanese war plans had assumed that American forces would require months to achieve combat effectiveness after initial surprise, but the Pearl Harbor attack was demonstrating American adaptation capabilities that could compress preparation timelines dramatically. The fuel storage facilities at Pearl Harbor represented strategic targets that Japanese planning had identified as critical to American naval operations, but the attack was revealing storage and distribution capabilities that exceeded intelligence estimates. The facilities contained fuel reserves sufficient for extended fleet operations while demonstrating redundancy and protective measures that suggested preparation for wartime conditions. Destruction of primary storage facilities was not preventing continued operation from secondary and tertiary sources. The failure to achieve complete destruction of American fuel storage capabilities would prove strategically significant because it enabled continued American naval operations from Pearl Harbor much sooner than Japanese planners had anticipated. American forces would demonstrate fuel management and distribution capabilities that allowed sustained operations despite tactical damage to primary facilities. This resilience suggested American logistics capabilities that exceeded Japanese strategic calculations. As the Pearl Harbor attack reached its climax, Commander Yamamoto was witnessing tactical success that validated Japanese training, equipment, and planning while simultaneously observing American capabilities that suggested strategic miscalculations of devastating proportions. Japanese forces were achieving every immediate tactical objective while encountering American responses that indicated preparation, capability, and determination that exceeded every assumption underlying Japanese war strategy. The tactical victory at Pearl Harbor was revealing strategic realities that would prove catastrophic to Japanese war objectives. American industrial capacity was demonstrating conversion potential that exceeded Japanese estimates. American military organization was showing adaptation capabilities that suggested resilience under sustained attack. American national psychology was revealing determination for prolonged conflict rather than negotiated settlement after initial defeat. Commander Yamamoto's torpedo bomber was climbing away from Pearl Harbor, having achieved perfect tactical execution of its assigned mission, while carrying its pilot toward the realization that tactical excellence could not overcome strategic miscalculation. The sleeping giant that Japanese forces had awakened was already demonstrating capabilities that would transform the Pacific War into an industrial contest that Japan could not win. The mathematics of tactical success were being overwhelmed by the mathematics of American production capacity and national determination. The Pearl Harbor attack will be remembered as Japanese tactical brilliance and strategic suicide, executed with precision that demonstrated Japanese military excellence while triggering American responses that would prove overwhelming. Commander Yamamoto had participated in the most successful surprise attack in naval history, while simultaneously witnessing evidence that Japan had challenged an enemy whose true capabilities exceeded every calculation that had shaped Japanese war planning. The dawn of December 7th would mark not just American entry into World War II, but Japanese confrontation with industrial and organizational realities that would prove decisive despite Japanese advantages in training, equipment, and tactical doctrine. The tactical triumph at Pearl Harbor would become Japan's strategic catastrophe, achieved with excellence that ensured its ultimate irrelevance against American capabilities that Japanese planners had never accurately assessed. Lieutenant Commander James Harrison stood amid the wreckage of what had been the USS Arizona's forward magazine, watching his damage control teams implement emergency procedures with efficiency that contradicted every Japanese assumption about American military preparedness. The massive battleship had suffered catastrophic damage from a direct bomb hit that penetrated her armor deck and detonated the forward ammunition storage. Yet within 30 minutes of the explosion, organized repair efforts were already underway with coordination that demonstrated training and preparation far exceeding peacetime standards. Around him, the harbor bore witnessed a tactical devastation that had achieved every immediate objective Japanese planners had established for the Pearl Harbor attack. 8 battleships had sustained varying degrees of damage that would require months of repair work. Over 300 aircraft had been destroyed on the ground. Critical fuel storage facilities had suffered significant damage. The immediate combat effectiveness of the American Pacific Fleet had been reduced by approximately 70%, exactly as Japanese strategic calculations had predicted. However, within the next 6 hours, Lieutenant Commander Harrison would witness American organizational responses that revealed industrial and logistical capabilities that Japanese intelligence had never accurately assessed. Emergency repair teams would demonstrate damage control techniques that exceeded Japanese naval standards. Communication systems would maintain coordination despite extensive facility damage. Most importantly, supply lines would begin delivering replacement equipment and materials at rates that suggested manufacturing capacity far beyond Japanese strategic calculations. The mathematics of American recovery were about to demonstrate that tactical success could not overcome strategic miscalculation when confronting an enemy whose true capabilities had been systematically underestimated. Japanese forces had achieved devastating initial results while awakening industrial and organizational responses that would transform their tactical victory into strategic catastrophe. The sleeping giant was not just awakening, it was revealing capabilities that would prove overwhelming despite Japanese tactical excellence and strategic preparation. The immediate aftermath of the Pearl Harbor attack provided the first concrete evidence that American military preparation exceeded Japanese intelligence estimates by significant margins. Lieutenant Commander Harrison's damage control teams were implementing emergency procedures that demonstrated extensive training for exactly these combat scenarios. Watertight door protocols were being executed with precision that required months of practice. Fire suppression systems were operating with coordination that indicated regular testing and maintenance beyond peacetime requirements. The speed and efficiency of American damage control responses contradicted Japanese assumptions about American military readiness and fighting spirit. Japanese planners had calculated that American forces would require extensive time to recover from initial shock and implement organized responses to attack damage. Instead, American personnel were demonstrating immediate adaptation to combat conditions while maintaining operational effectiveness under extreme stress. The psychological resilience being displayed suggested military culture and training that exceeded Japanese estimates of American fighting capability. Communication systems throughout Pearl Harbor were maintaining coordination despite significant damage to primary facilities, demonstrating redundancy and backup capabilities that Japanese intelligence had not identified. Emergency frequencies were operational within minutes of initial attack. Command structures were adapting to personnel losses while maintaining operational control. Information flow between different installations continued despite physical destruction of communication infrastructure. These capabilities suggested American military organization that incorporated wartime contingencies rather than peacetime administrative procedures. The logistical response to Pearl Harbor damage began immediately and demonstrated American industrial capacity that would prove decisive throughout the Pacific War. Emergency supplies were arriving from mainland sources within hours of the attack. Specialized repair equipment was being transported via aircraft and fast vessels with efficiency that indicated prepositioned resources and transportation capabilities. Technical personnel were being deployed from multiple installations to concentrate expertise where needed most urgently. These logistical capabilities revealed American industrial infrastructure that Japanese strategic planning had systematically undervalued. The ability to rapidly concentrate resources and expertise suggested manufacturing and transportation systems that could sustain military operations at scales exceeding Japanese capacity. Emergency response procedures demonstrated organizational capabilities that could adapt to crisis conditions while maintaining operational effectiveness. Most importantly, the speed of response indicated preparation for sustained conflict rather than expectation of negotiated settlement after initial defeat. Lieutenant Commander Harrison's professional assessment of American recovery capabilities was evolving throughout the day as he observed organizational responses that exceeded his own expectations. Repair teams were demonstrating technical competence that enabled innovative solutions to damage problems. Material resources were being allocated with efficiency that optimized repair priorities. Personnel were maintaining morale and effectiveness despite witnessing devastating attack results. These capabilities suggested American military culture that emphasized resilience and adaptation rather than rigid adherence to peacetime procedures. The technical aspects of damage control being implemented at Pearl Harbor demonstrated American naval engineering that exceeded Japanese estimates of American technological capability. Welding techniques were enabling rapid structural repairs that restored watertight integrity within hours rather than days. Pumping systems were controlling flooding with effectiveness that prevented total vessel loss. Electrical systems were being restored through innovative bypass procedures that maintained critical operational capabilities despite extensive damage. These technical capabilities revealed American engineering education and industrial experience that provided advantages Japanese planners had not anticipated. American naval personnel were demonstrating familiarity with advanced manufacturing techniques and materials science that enabled creative solutions to complex damage problems. Technical innovation was occurring in real time as American engineers developed repair procedures that exceeded standard damage control protocols. The ability to improvise effective solutions suggested educational and industrial backgrounds that prepared American personnel for technological challenges that Japanese training had not anticipated. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.